That's all good. It's smart casual today.
Yeah,
We'll call it
exactly.
business cash. Yeah, that's why I've got the
I
flamingo
do have
shirt on.
my
Yeah.
visors on my shirt. So that's like on brand.
Yeah, there we go. Nice.
Well, I think we'll maybe Taylor, we'll just touch on the LinkedIn first, just to get everyone sort of maybe in a line of like why we're doing this. But so Taylor and I have been chatting about this topic a lot. The LinkedIn platform has changed, and I don't know if you use LinkedIn Premium, but you can actually even see there's something called like a social selling index. And once you start to understand what social selling is, you'll start to see people using LinkedIn in a certain way. And you'll see these gurus out there, right? So that point is like the algorithm is evolving, and the platform is a underutilized channel for startups and people in general to grow their businesses, right? So now coming back to the content, in 2024, there are all these tools that we use that suddenly allow all four of us to be content creators. Laura would have never dreamed of me creating content ever. I've got no artistic bone in my body. So now with these tools, yes, we can create content easily, but at the same time, people use ChatGPT to write on LinkedIn, and the content is watered down. You can immediately see that's ChatGPT. This person didn't write it. I'm going to skip over it, right? Or they've got a marketing agency and it's great advertising and it's obviously advertising. And then in the middle, there's this stuff where it's like personal content. Maybe someone's written a post, but it's their actual ideas and thoughts. And when people get on the LinkedIn platform, whether they're going to make a sale or hire someone, they look at their feed. You know, humans are addicted to content or the internet. And the idea is that if you guys are making content, right, you can get it onto that feed. And through that feed, people get to learn about you, your mission, your idea. You get to own this idea, right? And at the same time, they can click from that content to your profile, get kind of converted because you can target it at a specific audience. And then, you know, they're talking to you. You're getting the right eyeballs on your business and in your inbox. That's kind of the high level thing. And what we're trying to, I guess, promote that concept because, like I said, I think it's underutilized and it's a free channel for startups and people who don't want to or can't invest money in like an agency or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it's actually a pretty good summary of what's going on in general and what people are sort of missing in their content. And I think it's also something that stops them from putting content together. Like, I mean, even in the last 3 months, like I usually put out quite a bit of frequent content. I started testing a bunch of different things against each other. So I was running campaigns on my LinkedIn to get people to join our newsletter, for example. So I was repurposing a lot of the content that was in our newsletter for LinkedIn and then posting it there and getting quite a bit of engagement, quite a lot of interest in it because it was valuable content to people, right? We were talking about sales, talking about marketing, ways to optimize your marketing, things you should say, ways to handle sales meetings, for example. But then I started posting a meme every now and again, and the engagement on the meme was like through the roof. So I was like, cool, how can I sort of combine some of this together? So I was posting once a week with like really valuable content, once a week with something that just made people laugh. And then that was taking my profile views, like raising them in a big way. And there's quite a lot that this actually does to your SSI. And are you guys familiar with SSI just yet? So you'll check mine here. At the moment, it's at 66, which I'm a bit bummed about. But I fixed that from the beginning of the week. It's sat at 60. The highest I've ever had it is 75. And if you can get your LinkedIn SSI above 70, you're in the top 5% of users on the platform. And I mean, you'll see here at 66, I'm in marketing and advertising, and my industry SSI ranks in the top 1%. So you can see, like, you don't have that much to compete with. But the better you do on this, the more likely it is that you're going to land in search results. The more likely it is that the algorithm is going to push your content to more people. And if you have an SSI that's higher than 70, then you actually get an automatic 25% boost in impressions on your content that you put out there. And it's based on 4 different pillars. Sorry, Donnie, was there something you wanted to say?
No, I didn't know that. That's cool. That's
yeah, that's
kind of unfair in a way.
It is, yeah. So LinkedIn likes when people use the platform for what they made it for. Okay. So initially when they sort of came up with it, it was like, okay, how can we build a social network that is going to link professionals with other professionals, either to learn from each other or to work together, right? So it was initially based on how are we going to help really talented people find jobs, and how are we going to help really talented people share ideas with one another. So we're going to look at it as this platform of engagement and knowledge sharing. And SSI sort of embodies that too, right? So yeah, I don't know if when I move my cursor, you guys are seeing on this share, but you'll see there the top component is establishing a professional brand. And that basically judges you on how well your profile is set up. Have you ticked all the boxes that LinkedIn wants you to tick? And they've even started putting in these little AI like profile auditors on your page that you can use to guide yourself through this. And then I can also provide you guys with an optimization template that will help, like, you know, step by step. Just make sure you tick all the boxes. And then also sharing content. And the next one is finding the right people. And that's a tough one if we're in sales or we're trying to interact with people that are outside of our industry, especially say if you're a software developer and you're trying to connect with people in fintech, like you're going to struggle to raise that SSI. It's really based on what people you're connecting with in a similar industry or a similar role to you. And this is sort of like a knowledge sharing pillar of SSI. The next one is engaging with insights. And that's actually just like scrolling through the platform, liking stuff, commenting on stuff. And you'll probably find that that's the one that decreases the quickest. So a couple of weeks ago, my engagement with insights was like 18. Now it's dipped all the way to 10 because I've just been a bit busy and I haven't been on LinkedIn as much. And one of the key things to actually get your engagement with insights really high is to comment with something that's going to start a discussion. So if you drop a comment on a post and someone replies to that comment and then you reply to it again, you'll like almost instantly see this thing rise. So something that you guys can do to keep that component of your SSI really high is create a LinkedIn engagement pod. And what I mean by that is like just a WhatsApp group, put like 5 of you guys on there that are committing to sharing content. And you sort of make a rule like, okay, cool, you can only share 2 posts per week in this group. But when you do that, everybody else in the group that sees it within an hour has to go and engage with it and leave a comment. And that also sort of breaks LinkedIn's algorithm a little bit, because if I comment on something that Justin has put out, it's very likely that Justin's content is then going to be distributed to my network as well. So you start sort of getting a lot of crossover from the way that you're interacting with each other. So obviously the people that you select for your pod is also fairly important because you want your stuff to land in front of your ideal client. And then, yeah, the final one is building relationships. And that is just having back and forth conversations in your LinkedIn inbox. LinkedIn loves it if you're actually chatting on their platform. Salespeople don't really love that because you want to have the initial discussion to get straight into a call. But just having plenty of conversations with the people that you connect with is really useful. And there's so many little nuggets of information. You know, Donnie and I'll probably drop a couple as we go along. But for example, if you connected with someone recently, they're 180%. I mean, this is a slightly old stat now. This is last year's stats because I can't remember the new one right off the top of my head. But you're 180% more likely to see the content that someone posts within 2 weeks of connecting with them. So LinkedIn wants you to engage with people that you've connected with recently. It wants you to engage with people in your network, with people in your industry, and people that you can share knowledge with. And yeah, thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
No, it's super insightful. I must say, like, it is quite heavily, well, from my side. I think Justin's a little bit more like LinkedIn, but that's also not saying too much, like savvy. But it is like a highly underutilized tool for us. I think what's good to kind of frame, and then and Justin jump in here as well. And I did mention this to Dan, is like how we, like what our goals for, I think LinkedIn are, and I think you guys can probably come with different insights into how we should use it better. But for us, obviously, we are raising investment. So that's like a subtle way of kind of doing that and connecting and like kind of building that network. But I think mainly like how we see that is actually using LinkedIn to build our profile as founders, as like
Yes.
authorities in the space, as tech founders, like from my side, as like a female founder in South Africa, tech company, I want to raise that profile. So I'm invited to speak on panels. So I'm invited to in events. I've got other female founders inviting me to join organizations and speak and like really like boost that profile as a founder. And then I guess the waterfall effect of that is that there is more engagement on the business, and it's like professionalizing Conservio. It's getting more eyeballs on it. And then the waterfall effect of that is obviously it's like investment, and we like down the road, and we really like nurturing those relationships. Yeah, like obviously we've got it's Conservio is a marketplace, so we don't see it as a huge like customer acquisition tool or a supply acquisition tool. But I think business profile and founder profiles like is really what we want to kind of elevate. Does that sound good? Have I hit is anything what you want to add there?
Yeah.
I think that's perfect, and yeah, I'd love to see your profile raised like that. I'm a consumer of LinkedIn, but I really hate the engagement part of it, like avidly. Like it makes me sick, but I need to do it. Yeah.
We find it really hard. Like we have a LinkedIn session every week, and Justin and I like just stare at each other. Like I think we like very like we're very like self-aware. We feel quite like uncool, or like it's probably because we think we're like too cool or something, like, you know what I mean? Like I find it hard. Like I find it hard commenting. I find it cringy. So it's like, yeah, it is a bit of a hurdle for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it is actually, because a lot of the content people put out there is a little bit cringy. And I think then it's also like, you know, the same way if you go on your Instagram and you go and like a lot of pictures of cats.
I deleted Instagram.
Well, then, yeah, good for you, dude. Like, yeah, seriously. But yeah, if you go and like a bunch of pictures of cats, you're going to get more pictures of cats.
Yeah.
And it's not always the same on LinkedIn. Right, the algorithm does work quite differently. So if you go and like a whole lot of really interesting tech content, it's not necessarily going to push you a lot of tech content. It's rather going to push you more content from the people that you liked, right? Or from the hashtags that it was associated with. So, oh, shame. But yeah, so the algorithm works differently. You've got to go and like producers of content whose quality of content you think is great, right? The kind of stuff that you read and watch that makes you feel like I should comment on this and have a conversation about it, or hashtags with really interesting content on them, because then LinkedIn will start pushing you stuff that you feel is worthy of actually engaging with. And also then follow businesses that you support, other professionals that you support, because the more we can start helping each other as a community to do that kind of thing, the better.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll help with your engagement cringe, for sure. And we can, yeah, I think, sorry, Donnie, I know you had your hand up. You should go ahead now, but I think this conversation is interesting. Let's maybe we can just keep going on the LinkedIn stuff, give you guys as much value as we can here, and then we can get into a business discussion for content afterwards.
I think I might have the segue, but I just wanted to touch on what Justin said, and it lines up with this other concept that I had, right? So we discussed the platform dynamics in detail, but now forget about the platform for a second, right? Think about the fact that if you're creating content, it doesn't need to be to promote you or your business directly. You don't have to sell. And that's how it lines up with what Taylor said about the memes. If you're just creating something interesting, like it's you guys fucking, I love Justin's last post where he was like doing photography in the wild. If you made a series, right, where you just like taking pictures or whatever in the wild and in these cool places, people consume that. So you get this engagement. You don't feel like inauthentic. You feel normal. You're being yourself. Like, this is my life. This is my job. This is what I'm doing. People like following that. It's real. Suddenly you get loads of engagement. And through that, because it's done through your profile as a founder, it becomes your vehicle to grow your brand as a founder. And like you couple that with the algorithm dynamics, you put that together, and then it can be fun and easy and a no-brainer from my perspective, right? And how that is a segue is because I used the word vehicle. Was Taylor, the reason why I wanted to get these guys on the call is because of this concept when Laura explained it to me, I don't know, years ago or again recently. It gave me like a light bulb moment, right? So originally people or myself used to think like tourism can be an exploitation of animals or nature or whatever, right? And then I think it was when Laura was like doing her MBA and traveling around and we were talking about it, and then explained to me how actually it's really difficult. There are all these complications. If you use tourism, it's a vehicle. That's how I got here, but maybe not even just a vehicle. Maybe it's the best way to get money allocated to these areas so that it can support taking care of these natural places. And maybe even there's a bit of urgency to it. Maybe it's not just like, oh, fight CO2. There's more to it. Like people need to get behind this idea, have this light bulb, and know the concept. And that's why I thought Justin, Laura could own this idea, and it would be super interesting for you to sort of hear more about it.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's it. And I think it's like an interesting one, especially like you say, Dan, there with like the whole CO2 thing, because that's been quite heavily linked to tourism, like to flying, which is like tourism. So it makes it quite a tricky space. And this is what I was explaining to you last time, Dan, like a tricky space for us to really like push the narrative of impact and call it sustainability and stuff, because you can get quite heavily questioned on like, oh, but are they driving vehicles and blah, blah. And people very much see impact, and especially like they see impact or sustainability as a CO2 thing, whereas there's this major element of that biodiversity protection and nature and wildlife protection and the conserving of wild spaces in their most natural state that tends to kind of like, it tends to be harder to grasp. And I think, that's kind of like how we see it, and that's how we see things. And then obviously, I mean, we can get into like why tourism, like what tourism can do for that. But that's like, we find that narrative like, it's hard to like get there sometimes with people because they just see like the CO2 side.
Yeah, there's 17 SDGs, right? And like CO2 reduction is incredibly important, but there's so much more impact that we need to make. And that is something that's often overlooked, especially by investors, right? Because why is CO2 so popular with investors? Because it's measurable. You can say X tons of CO2 removed or, not emitted into the atmosphere, which is then like a KPI that they can then put forward to their LPs, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's not good. That's great that they're focused on that, but that means that all of the attention is going to CO2 and we forget about all the other areas where we need to make an impact, right? And that's been a struggle for us to find impact investors, because usually like their thesis is, okay, CO2 reduction and we can measure it in this way.
Interesting that like there's almost always a way to break an argument down with a side issue. And even if it's not the issue that you guys as a company are trying to address, like there's obviously a very important impact you're making, and I'd love for you to like sort of dissect that for a little bit with me after this monologue. But I think it's very easy for someone to say, oh, you shouldn't be flying because X amount of carbon's being emitted as a result of that, or maybe you should drive an electric vehicle. If you're going to eat a vegan diet and you're so concerned about the environment, like why don't you drive a Tesla? It can get so complicated with people, and I think leaning into the mission and the value of what you're actually doing is it doesn't matter if you're not ticking all of the boxes. At least you're doing like absolutely everything you can in the industry that you're in, or trying to make the impact that you are in. So when you guys refer to conservation and like what you're sort of putting back into it through travel and you know, I suppose the upkeep and retaining these wild areas or biodiverse areas. How are you guys actually contributing to that through Conservio? Or how does your model work there?
Yeah, well, I think it's good to maybe like take one step back and also just like understand that concept. And the thing for us to be able to keep natural areas in their most wild state, and now we can think about that as a forest, we can think about that as like a wildlife area, a national park, or a privately owned game reserve. We can think about that as like a big piece of like farmland in the Karoo or whatever. For us to be able to do that, you have to be able to create viable businesses that can support that. So if I've got a forest and it makes more sense to cut down all the trees and sell the trees, then like I'm going to do that, because viable businesses is the way that things work. And like I think it's very important that people wrap their heads around that we need viable businesses. And like, yeah, anyway. So if I want to do that, if I've got a forest, I can cut down the trees and I can make money. Or what I can do is build, like as an example, a little glamping unit, some low impact accommodation. People pay to come stay, and I'm able to keep that in its most wild state. So now I'm able to keep the forest, there's some trails, I've got people coming to visit, and it's creating a viable business of this forested area. On the other scale, I've got a privately owned game reserve, okay? That requires a huge amount to keep that in its state. Okay, I've got wildlife costs, I've got conservation costs, I've got employment, I've got all of that, whatever I need to do to keep that and protect that land. It's different to the forest, but it has the same principle. The thing that keeps that, because it requires money to keep it that way and protect wildlife and protect those areas, is creating a business model around it. And tourism and the part of tourism that we focus on is ecotourism. So it's nature-based tourism, okay? From the cabin in the forest to the safari camp, whatever it might look like, is to create a business model that works. And tourism, like to be able to protect, and especially in a place like Africa, but this is true for all over the world, to protect natural areas, tourism is one of the best tools that we have to achieve this at scale, because it brings money into areas that might that are natural. If you're thinking about Kenya, you're thinking about Tanzania, you're thinking about South Africa as a whole, Namibia, these are big tracts of land that have been able to stay in those ways because money is coming into the economy, and that supports local communities, employment. I mean, the knock-on effect is obviously is big, but it's not a perfect solution, like we've said, and there is also really bad players. So it's our mission to find the players that are doing the right thing and that speak to this ethos and are building the eco cabin in that area and being able to keep that forest, that safari lodge that is built in the right way, and they're following the right practices and trying to generate as much revenue to them as possible through a tech-enabled system. So yeah, that's kind of like the understanding of the landscape. And then obviously how we do that can be quite, yeah, we can get there.
That's so cool, guys.
Yeah.
Can I ask you
That's
a question?
a good snippet right
maybe,
there.
maybe Justin, maybe you can answer this one. Is there, so based on what Laura just said, right? Is there an opportunity to get some sort of other investor in, maybe not impact investor, but partner with, like, I don't know if it's a hotel trying to diversify or some real estate group where they're like, okay, let's go set up like an awesome lodge or something. And because of your guys' platform, we can, like, you know, funnel the customers there or something like that, where maybe it's not just impact investors, but it's other businesses can get involved once they understand your guys.
Yeah, so it's really like our investor base are really people that see what Lara just said, right? Like they really understand and have seen that tourism can create a lot of impact locally, right? In conservation, in job creation, etc. And it's those people that have seen it that, you know, are willing to put their money also on the table. So we have a broad investor base of like different, usually entrepreneurs who either are, you know, from the tourism industry or are from the tech industry and have seen, you know, the impact that also tech can make in like an old archaic ecosystem as tourism. So definitely but they need to see it. Like, it's hard to just convince them, right? Like, they need to know it. And then usually when we chat to them, like, they instantly like fall in love with what we do. And then, so we usually know in the first chat if it's going to happen or not, because, you know, if we need to explain this at length, then they don't see it and we're not going to convince them, right? And to the previous point, like, if CO2 is that KPI for them, I mean, that's just their company KPI, right? So they might see what we do, but still they can't measure, you know, their important KPI, and therefore it's not a match. So we're not in a position to convince them or to change their strategy, because we would be 1 out of 100 portfolio companies for them, right? So there's really a different type of investor that suits us very well. And there are also, like, having said that, there are also impact funds out there that do fit Conservio. It's just like the spread is a little bit thin.
And also we have also looked at other organizations like that we could maybe partner that, you know, want to like pioneer tourism, and like we do see an opportunity like also for those kind of collaborations, but it often isn't like an investment, but it's like maybe this is a project that we could like look at, if you know what I mean. So that makes it sometimes a little bit.
And the danger of that is that, you know, we're a startup, a tech startup, which means that we have to be hyper focused, right? And hyper focus on the one thing where we can put all of our efforts and resources, so that thing can start to scale. And then we can think about all of these other cool projects, and there are like hundreds and thousands of them, but we have to say no to most, like to 99% of projects or cool things that we can do. We have to say no, because we have to stay diligent to the process and really focus so we can get those outsized returns.
So it seems like education, or just getting this idea out there, because I'm sure there are a lot of smart, wealthy business people or philanthropic people that when they hear about this, they'll be like, flipping, I'd love to get involved. So maybe we got to churn out some clips and
yeah,
in front of these people.
Well, I think also that, like, the other side of that is like, I think the right investors know about this. I think the people that don't know about it is like you guys, right? Like the people that are traveling and the people that can travel locally. And I think that's really the brand and the story that we want to put forward here, is that you don't have to feel guilty if you travel to these places. No, you're actually contributing, you're making so much positive impact. And especially here in Europe, there's so much like negative feelings around traveling, you know, especially in my circles. You really have to defend yourself if you're gonna hop on a plane, right? So if we can actually say, no, guys, you need to do this, like this is helping so much for these local communities, for conservation, and we can build a brand around that. That's actually what, you know, the sort of the Patagonia, that's how we've called it before, the Patagonia of travel, right? If you buy Patagonia, you don't know like exactly like how much those people got paid, but you know it's going to be a good wage. You know, you don't know exactly where the cotton is coming from, but you know it's going to be in the right way produced. It's sustainably produced. So you trust the brand, right? And we want to be that brand in travel.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think like another thing there that we've also like we've battled with slightly is this idea of how it's seemingly like ecotourism, like is the term ecotourism. So this is also what we find with investors. They immediately think it's niche. And it's like, and that's what we've toyed around. Then we've been like, no, nature-based, nature-positive tourism, nature-based tourism. And now we just like places to stay in nature, just to make it seem accessible. Because people think like, you don't ever refer to like, oh, I'm going away to a nature-based accommodation. Like you never say that. But every weekend, like Taylor, where you live, that's all like nature-based accommodation everywhere, cabins, cottages, all of that. I mean, every weekend away that I go to a cottage on like a beautiful farm, like in Wellington, or like I'm going to a cabin or whatever. It's like, it is literally the way people experience Africa, and there's so much of it. It's like, we also really like, and it's like a brand thing, is like struggle to just get, like to try and get people to understand like how accessible, well, not accessible, how much of it this is. And we want to make it accessible and make that like discovery and the bookability of that super accessible. So, and that's also with investors, is as soon as we say ecotourism, they box it. They're like, oh, it's too niche, or like sustainable, too niche. And it's very hard to portray that, especially to international investors. Like, no, this is a huge market. If you think about tourism in Africa, how big tourism in Africa is, like, this is a big portion of that. So it's like, we've really kind of like, just what the term, like, kind of struggle. Because if you think about it, like booking.com, you book hotels in Amsterdam, bam, that's like booking.com. You book hotels, you do that, you're going to New York, you book on booking.com. Airbnb is like that kind of single unit, a house on the coast, or if you go into Amsterdam, you're looking for an apartment or whatever, that's kind of Airbnb. But we are this other kind of like subsection of tourism, which is this nature-based, getting out to nature, making that accessible, bringing that online. And like Justin alluded to it earlier, but it's a very archaic kind of like dinosaur industry. It works in a certain way. There's not a lot of tech behind it. There's certainly not a lot of like visibility online. And that is the space that we want to fill. But it's like getting people to like see what that is. But it's like, yeah, so that's kind of where the points that we like toy between.
And maybe if I can double click on one thing Laura said there, is also she was speaking about like what's around you, right? And I think that's one of the sort of beautiful things that we also want to portray. Is like, it's not about getting on a plane, it's also about appreciating and understanding what's around you and where can you drive to. And I mean, South Africa is the most insane country, right? With also like a big internal market that travels locally. That's why it's such an interesting market for us, because we're not actually focused at all on getting more Europeans to South Africa. We focus on how can we let South Africans travel more locally, right? And that's also like to the post, you know, like you alluded to, Dan, there was like, that's also what I wanted to say. I'm like, no, I don't have to go to Africa to enjoy nature. I can actually jump on my bike here, and like 30 minutes from Amsterdam, I can be in nature and you know, like, and enjoy my birds. And I think that's a very like sort of positive habit that we need to get into our societies, is that people like look at nature that way, like something that doesn't have to be far away. It can be close, but it needs to be frequent, right? And if you visit it frequently, you care for it enough, you really care for it, and then you also want to protect it, right? So that's like the other like thread that is weaving in our sort of brand story.
Yeah, that's fascinating. When Laura sort of reframed it now as well, like, I mean, Americans don't come to Cape Town to go and ride the Ferris wheel at the waterfront, you know. They come to Cape Town to see Table Mountain, you know, and to maybe, well, I mean, not everybody, because everybody has their different reasons for traveling, but around SA, like, there are so many places to actually just go and see and experience and sit and be in nature, that make the whole experience special. And I'm sure that there are plenty of places to do that in most other countries in the world, where it's absolutely possible for you to experience the raw parts of your surroundings that we just don't see when we live in cities. And it feels like, to me, like, you guys are just sort of creating a portal for people to actually experience more about of what's around them. Because I mean, I can tell, you know, all of us have traveled quite a bit, and you know, like, I've also done like a lot of Africa, like having grown up in mainly in Tanzania. Now when I'm in South Africa and seeing what is there to experience, you know, like, we're planning our my fiance and I are planning our wedding for next year, and our honeymoon. We're thinking, okay, cool, we can go to Bali, we can go to Mauritius or something. And then we were like, well, there's so much for us to see right here. Why don't we just pack a car and pick a whole bunch of different places and go and work on the road for like 3 months? And like, once you actually start going and Googling and checking out what's available to you within 5 hours drive from George, it's mind-blowing.
Right? So you check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we know
Well,
what-
I'm
now
going
we
to
know
now.
what- Yeah.
Yeah.
And going to Tesla, bro.
Yeah.
But also on your point there as well, Taylor, which I actually think is good to kind of bring in, is that there is so much. Okay, so by there being so much, it means that there is a lot of noise. as well. Like if you go
Mm.
type in Kruger on booking.com, like tell me how that experience looks for you. It is,
Yeah.
it is so much information. Most of it is like actually in 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 Wildlife Estate, which is where like my friend lives. It's like it's a residential area. Like there's a lot of noise in travel, and it makes it actually quite difficult, especially in a country like South Africa, like where to start, where to go, how do I vet this? How do I know that this is quality? Because like we fed all this information and trust, exactly. So I think trust is a big one. So if I'm traveling, I will actually ask people, like if like a lot of word of mouth happens in this industry, or they're brands that you kind of like trust in some ways. So like, and that is a big point of like of Conservio, is that we also like, we recognize that. So for us, it's everything, like we vet everything. We're not trying to be a platform that's got like 20,000 properties that we don't even like, they're just on there, like, and it's mass and like, just like go and like, and it's disappointing. As we want quality, like we want to pick an area like Sedgefield and have a couple of really good quality properties at different levels to fit different needs. But like, that is what we think is good enough in Sedgefield and in the gain in the next region. So it's not about just like accumulating mass product. It's about finding quality and making it easier just for people to actually book the right thing. Because like you trying to do that and just being like, let's hit the road. Like you'll make an Instagram status, maybe like my fiance and I are traveling, like that's hard. Like, and then like, or like, and then you want to like splurge on one night and like find something good. And this is like, it's a lot of money. It's like, maybe you want to like have a splurge night at a little lodge. Like, where do you go to find that? Like, and truthfully, like,
Go to Conservio.
yeah, well, now you know.
There we go.
Now you know.
Yeah, you know, a lot of it, and I think a lot of what we see in SA as well is word of mouth. Like people get to know the area, they get to know what people are doing and the personalities behind establishments like that. They're like, dude, this guy Taniqua Treetops in 𝐶𝐻𝐻𝐻 is doing something super special. Like, you know, they're keeping nature together. You can sit there and watch luries from your deck. You know, you can't see any other rooms around you. This is awesome. The people are great. They're doing the right thing. Go and check it out. You're like, okay, cool. That convinces me. But if I go and look on booking.com and I look at maybe what their prices are like compared to other places nearby and the photos that they put together and how similar a lot of that stuff kind of looks, when you get to somewhere that is same, but different, you know, you'll end up looking at this and thinking, okay, well, I was kind of conned into this. So to have a place where you can sort of trust and, as you say, vet where you're going to go and what's going into that property is like, I think that's a really interesting niche to fall into, and it creates a lot of as you and I both said earlier, trust for the consumer that's going to be jumping in there, that at least they're contributing to something positive.
Yeah.
But yeah, Donnie, I don't know if you got a question, but yeah. I can see you chomping.
I mean, I've got a couple questions. Just a couple fun ones. How does Pro Conservation Vacation sound?
Pro Conservation, I like it. Good tagline. Pro Conservation Vacation.
Do you guys get a chance, or do you have to go and visit all these different places that would go on your platform?
So what was, I think I visited quite a lot, like through my previous job, I'd visited quite a lot of, especially areas, I would say. We don't have to go. It definitely is something that we wanting to do a lot more of, just like individually. Like Justin, when he comes down here, he'll go and stay with a couple. So it's, we don't do as much as we probably should, would like to.
Lara forces me to do that. It's one of the worst things besides writing on LinkedIn. It's like,
yeah, Justin hates it. It's going up to the Kruger.
Sounds so tough, man.
When you guys were talking, and back when Justin was explaining how you want people to just like get out all around you into nature, and I was just thinking, like, it just seems like a lot of people are just not aware. And or have habits, you know, you grow up with habits of where you go. You're actually going into maybe a place that's on the platform just because your family's always done that in like June, July holidays. But I was just thinking if either you guys would just, you know, not in a salesy way, but just documenting like we hear, or when people go there, they got some benefit, like grabbing a little 10-second video or selfie of themselves, and you like give them a discount or something, and just flooding the internet with some of those, so South Africans start to just pick up that there's all this stuff around them and there's purpose to it, and it can be fun, and they can feel kind of excited about like exploring the platform, like where can I go that is going to be an epic holiday, but also it's going to be like cool, and I'm doing a good thing, I'm living deliberately.
Consumer generated content. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a
tech.
yeah.
Yeah, we've done a
Consumer.
cool. Oh,
Sorry, please go
okay.
ahead. I think I'm delayed there. Go ahead, Justin.
No, I wanted to say, like last year, we did a very cool partnership with 𝐂𝐴 indeed, where we had like big screens up in their stores, and people, how did it work again, Laura? Like they tagged like their favorite place on Instagram. I think they tagged us, and then they showed like an image of them like in their favorite place in nature. I think we did it last August.
Yeah, so it was like a competition. So we did a partnership with them, and then essentially like all you had to do was like tag a photo of yourself in nature, tag 𝐂𝐴☆ tag Conservio, and then we had like screens in their thing. So it's cool. It's like a nice like alignment as well. And then, but it was very cool seeing people's content, and like up in Table Mountain, or like at a little farm somewhere. It's just like nice to see people get out. And I think
Was there a lot of content?
Yeah, there was good engagement. Was it last August? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it was good engagement. It's like, and it's definitely something that we see as a brand, that like other brands, like if we think of retail brands, that they resonate with us because it's non-competitive but similar market, and speaks to something quite a lot of brands want to align with. So so it's definitely like a cool kind of avenue to explore these different like
you need to get
collabs.
the Springboks to use your platform. You need to get Sia to understand your idea, and then when he says it in a video, then everyone will be like, that's it.
Follow. Yeah, I mean, they're always doing, like, when I look at like if I go look at them, they're like always doing rhino notchings or somewhere, or like Sonny Bill Williams comes down to visit Sia, and then they both go on like safari together. Like it would be, because we've got quite a nice relationship with FOM, Freedom of Movement, which Sia is obviously involved in. But it would be such a good segue to like get them like do a cool collab and be like, but let's get Sia like dressed by FOM on safari, doing something epic. Yeah. No, but exactly. I think like what that just is as well is just like making it seem more accessible. Like this thing isn't just like this highfalutin like way that we travel. It's actually something that people do. And what you said there as well, Dan, like really resonates, because it's how in my circles and network, it's how everyone is traveling. Like, I go on so many different weekends away, things like that. That's all Conservio-esque. Or then I'm like planning to head up to the Kruger, or going somewhere like in Mozambique. Like it's all like when I'm speaking to my friends, unless they are going like to Europe or wherever, they're traveling in a Conservio way. So like that's who we need to be looking at. Those are our customers. They're doing it anyway. We don't have to create new habits. We just need to like create a really good experience. Like we're not trying to create a market. The market is there. It's about like creating that experience that like, oh, you just made this so easy for me to do this. And it was such a good experience. And like, I booked it and I'm now going, and I'm trusting that it was great. Like when we do customer interviews and we chat to people that have booked, like they haven't heard of Conservio, it popped up like TripAdvisor, something Conservio, they clicked on Conservio and they go through, and you're obviously interested, like why? Like booking.com was there, like why? And there is this element like, no, it just like seemed fresh. Like immediately I had perceived it looked like quality. I knew that, like I immediately felt like, oh no, this is good. Like the platform looks sick. It's easy to use. There's like, and it's at its like infancy in terms of where we're going with it. But it's like, it's so interesting. Like what I often feel, I get a feeling of like, first of all, they love it. And then I get a feeling after, like, you kind of showed them something they weren't aware that they needed, but they're like, oh, this is cool. Like, now I'm in. But that's quite a tricky one, because people aren't aware how much better it can be, the booking experience. So that's where it becomes a little bit like it's a challenge that we have to undertake.
There's a lot of
education.
Taylor, I don't know if you having the same experience, but just listening to you guys, Justin, Laura, there's so much content. There's so many things you guys can do once a week. Like, you can do what impact investors ask you. You can like interview someone or like show them their positive experience on the platform. There's just like loads of stuff you can do. I think you should start your own like polymer that you can reuse, and you can use it on all the platforms. But like, you guys can generate demand. Like Laura said, people aren't aware there's something they needed. So you put the content there slowly, and when they happen to get onto your profile and or through their friend, they get sent a video, they're like, oh, this is cool. Now you've got like a lifetime customer. Every June or December holiday, they go to Conservio, and that's how they do holidays.
Donnie made a good point there as well, around like what you can do with the people that are actually interacting with Conservio, and get some user feedback, because at the end of the day, people buy from people, and we can use Booking.com, but like, I don't know a single face at that company, and yeah, a question that sort of came up for me there while I was listening to Daniel's chopped up voice speaking was, you know, how far removed are you actually from the consumer that books on the platform? Is it like, you know, as someone who hasn't used Conservio before, am I going to interact with a human at all? Or is it mainly the brand that I interact with? And you know, do you see much value in actually interacting with the people that use Conservio?
Do you want to take that one, Justin? I feel like I've done a lot of talking.
That's good. It's a tricky question, because a couple of months ago we would have said, yes, you always speak to someone, because that's really like core to our company, and you know, we really see that like human element and sort of touch point and support as something that's valued by customers. But on the flip side of that, it's less scalable, right? So from a company perspective, like, it means that if we grow our bookings times 10, we also have to grow our customer support times 10. So we try to be very smart about it, where at the moment, yes, we still have like multiple touch points with our customers, also because how Lara described it, right? We really want to learn from them and learn from their experience and use those insights to improve that customer journey. But then we also very much thinking about how can we scale this thing, right? So what can we automate? Like what emails can we automate but still feel personal? So it's a bit of both, but we definitely like have it very much at our core that if you don't know what you're looking for, right, you can always reach out. Like, our phone number is on the side, like our email is on the side, our chat is on the side. So it is very easy for you to get in contact with us. Like, within minutes we'll respond, versus like a Booking.com where it's actually very hard to get in contact with them. And that having said, I mean, that's a USP now, but then there is of course a reason why it's so hard on Booking.com, because it also, you know, you have to deal with a lot of shit. And they are at such a state that they don't, you know, that they can say we don't do that. But yeah, that like personal like touch and like feel is definitely what we at this stage of the company want to portray. Yeah. Did I say that right, Laura?
Sure. Yeah, no, 100%. And I think the way that it is spot on. But I think the way that we want to be able to create that personality is in the brand, and not so much in the fact that like you're going to be on the phone call with someone every time you make a booking, but that there's like a personality or an element of care. Like, it's not a machine. You're not like going into, oh, you look at my cat here.
No, I'm looking, sorry, Taylor's face froze on my screen just in a very funny way. So
my cats are trying to bite my screen. But yes, I think it's an element of like, we're going to be quite intentional at Conservio not becoming a machine, because a machine like doesn't care about the environment, doesn't care about the customer, doesn't care about whatever. So it's like, how do you create that personality of like care without it being like, I have to speak to every customer, because that's just not scalable. And we can't achieve what we would like to achieve from an impact side by not being a scalable business. So it's about like, yeah, that little like sweet spot.
Yes.
And like giving it that
Interesting point. That
I've
yeah,
got a
and I
question.
think yeah,
You've
go
gotta raise
ahead,
your
Donnie.
hand.
Sorry again. Hmm.
No, you go. I can wait.
Okay, no. I feel like you guys have probably been waiting for my internet to pull through the whole time here as well. But it's an interesting point that Lara made there, and sort of Justin reiterated, that if you aren't able to scale the business, you actually make less of an impact.
Yeah.
So optimizing this business in a way that's actually going to get more people using it, get more people booking and going to all of these spots, is going to create a larger impact. And if you can't create a system of operations that doesn't benefit your scaling, there's actually a lot at stake. It's firstly your business, and secondly also the impact that you make through it. So it's quite interesting there. And I suppose it's also just looking at what systems you can put in place for people to interact with the brand or interact with the business a little bit more, maybe through socials, because obviously you guys aren't there in person to speak people through a booking, because that's firstly not scalable, and secondly, people don't really want to make a phone call to Domino's. They'd rather download the app and order it through that way. And I think as a consumer market, a lot of us have moved away from speaking to people and prefer using an app or a web portal to do this kind of thing. So, I mean, yeah, like looking at the way that you guys are scaling at the moment, what are the most important aspects of that project for you?
Yeah,
Because I mean, the drive is there, like from the conservation side, but
yeah.
like what sort of areas are you focusing on in your scaling, your scale up?
Yeah, so the company consists out of 3 sort of core teams. We got supply, demand, and product, right? And that is also in itself the difficulty of building a marketplace, right? Because we're bringing together supply, demand on a product, which is a marketplace business model. And the tricky thing there is like having supply and demand on the product at the same time, and being able to find each other, right? Like that is sort of the sort of secret sauce of a marketplace. If you get that right, it can scale through the roof, but it's very hard to get that. So for us, that means like, okay, onboarding supply, like Lara mentioned before, in certain regions. So we know that someone, when they're searching for accommodation in Sedgefield, we actually have a multiple options, right? If you only have one option that's not available, we lose that customer, right? So it's really thinking smartly about how do we scale supply, and then how do we attract the right amount of traffic, amount of people that are searching for the things that we have, and how do they interact in the right way? And that translates into conversion rates. So what is the conversion of the traffic that we convert into a booking? And that's really our core metric. How can we increase that conversion rate? And that's really like the game of scaling this.
Okay. Nice, interesting. Yeah, we could definitely have a discussion about that in another meeting at some stage. Like, yeah, because conversion is such an important part of any sort of web-based platform. Like, yeah, and what you say and how you say it is really how you achieve that. And I mean, are you guys getting quite a lot of user feedback when they use your platform as well? Like, do they tend to leave testimonials and ratings like at length?
Well, I think maybe double clicking on what you said before, I think you summarized it really well, is that people want to use a product and don't want to speak to people. So when they do speak to people, that's for us a learning opportunity. Okay, what was the information that was missing here, right? So was there no availability? They couldn't find what they were looking for. Is there something wrong with search? Like, so there is a reason that they reached out, right? And we want to understand that reason. And if we find enough of them, like that goes in our product roadmap and we fix it, right? So that is how we use customer engagement, and same as reviews, of course, right? Like if there's a bad review, that keeps us up for a week and then we fix it, right? So that's how we have all these feedback loops from what we get back as input from our customers into how do we improve the product further.
Because the thing on the point around scalability is that the product needs to deliver on the need. So like as much insight that we can get that improves the conversion on site is how we actually build a scalable product. Like if every single booking is requiring me to be on the phone to someone to get them through the funnel, like there are things missing. And it's so like for us, it's, you know, with the whole booking journey is online booking. I mean, discovery all the way to payment. And now it's like identifying those points. Where are people either falling off? Where are they having questions that they need to be in touch with someone? And then focusing on, and then figuring that, like we're putting that into a roadmap to be like, okay, this is how we improve that part of it. So there's less drop off, less need for engagement, and people feel held by the platform the whole way through. And that's very much like the game that we're in now.
Love that.
Like focusing on these little bits of optimization.
There's so many interesting parts to business like this. But yeah, Dani, please.
I don't know what the time constraints are like for these two, but I did have one more question. Was because we started talking about it, but what is the future of Conservio? What is like the vision that you guys have?
Justin?
Both of you.
Well, let's start. Like, first of all, what we want to do is really build an amazing platform for South Africa, right? And that's like when I spoke about focus before, we really want to make sure this works well in South Africa, because there we can see that the market dynamics are there, right? Like there's not demand, there's not supply, and we just need to make sure that they can fight each other. But of course, we're also looking like across borders, right? So Southern Africa, like amazing markets there. And then we have Eastern Africa. So that consists out of Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, maybe. That's sort of our Eastern Africa focus, which will be a separate almost entity, because the market dynamics are a little bit different there. So that's sort of the first 2 or 3 stages in Africa. But of course, then you can say, okay, we have African ambitions. But what we actually see is that these are global trends, right? Like getting out to nature are global trends, and traveling in a more impactful, sustainable way are global trends. So, and also, Booking.com is great, like Lara described before, for city travel, but same here in Europe, right? Like if I want to go out to nature, it's actually quite hard to book that. If you think about South America, right? Like very similar market dynamics as in Africa. If you think about Southeast Asia, also incredible nature, like quite hard to book that online. So if you start thinking about it that way, there's a global market for Conservio. And that's also where we sort of see the end point. Like, can we really build like a global brand, like a global player that is the OTA, right? Like the technical term for like an online booking platform. Can we build the OTA for getaways to nature that's globally active? And that's going to be a long shot, but it's a shot we're taking.
Yeah. I think like the one, like, well, not the one thing, but because there's tons, but like the thing that Justin and I are super aligned on is that we want to build a relevant company. Like that's very big for us. Is like, and relevance is in different terms, like relevant, becoming a relevant partner, being relevant to the consumer, but also like being relevant in the revenue that you drive. So I'd like the way that we see it is not to be doing like a couple of % bookings for a scattering of properties like across the whatever, but being like a deep partner, the same way that like the current booking giants are deep partners for hotels in Amsterdam. Like we want to be deep partners for these nature-based places. So I think like, yeah, because like relevance to us is impact. And I think like if we can be a relevant, like a good business, and like, again, it does come back to building a viable, good business. And if we can build a very, very good business around Conservio, we will be a relevant partner. And I think that like, yeah, that's where we want to go.
Awesome.
I love that. I love the way that you guys speak about this. There's so much drive and so much passion behind it. And sorry, if you guys do have time for one more question, this is one for Justin, because like, Lara and I, you and I have met. Dani, like we're all South Africans. We as a nation and as a people, we are extremely passionate about South Africa and about Africa as a whole. Justin, I saw that you ran a CrossFit in Kampala, for example. Like where does your interest and your passion for Africa and maybe specifically South Africa come from? Like what were the experiences that shaped that for you?
Well, that's going to be a long story, but like going all the way back, I've always had a passion for biology, right, and for wildlife. And like when I was a kid, I didn't watch like Disney movies, but I watched nature documentaries. So we have this like Dutch guy, 𝐒𝐻𝐫𝐲, who was like one of the first like nature documentary makers, and he had this documentary, The Leopard's Son. I still remember it really well, and it's about a leopard growing up, I think in the Serengeti, and I watched that over and over and over again. So from like a very early like stage in my life, I was like fascinated by like the African, like savanna and nature there. So I always had this idea of traveling and visiting and maybe perhaps even working there at some stage in my life. And I did like got the opportunity to travel quite early on, and just fell in love with Africa as a continent. And once you've traveled and you've seen it, like either people love it or they hate it, I think. But most people love it. Like most people like they get the bug and they want to come again, they want to travel again. So that was always like how I romanticized Africa when I was a kid growing up. I studied I had a special biology. I always thought I was going to be a biologist or something in conservation. But then I also figured out that usually when you study biology, you probably become a teacher or a researcher, and that was not really something for me. And I got really fascinated also by business when I was in my teenage years, and I really love that you have a problem and you build like a beautiful solution for that, and that's a company, right? So you can solve like all these problems in the world. You can solve them by building companies. So that really fascinated me. So I actually studied business rather than biology. And after finishing my degree in entrepreneurship, I got the opportunity to go to Cape Town and work for the Dutch embassy there. The idea there was, the Dutch embassy really wanted Dutch innovations to come to South Africa to see like how they can support, solving local problems. So that was really for me a great segue back into Africa, but now from the business perspective. I also found out by that, I was still so young. I didn't know anything. I didn't have any experience. I was like, let me first get back to Europe, get some working experience, like get something under my belt, something I can also offer back to the country. And then when I'm ready, I'll go back. And then in 2019, my girlfriend, she got an opportunity to move to Uganda for work. So we're like, okay, let's do it. And initially it was for 6 months and turned out to be 4 years. Also partly due to COVID, right? Like we were there during COVID. So long story short, that's sort of why that's my background. So it was always also for my family very clear and apparent that this would be like what I was going to do. And it's very cool that it worked out this way. And it actually like also me saying this now is actually quite cool. Conservio is always like the thing I was going to work on. It was predetermined in a way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Absolutely love
we
that.
We just need Conservio CrossFit, and then then it's all the all the passion, our sister company, Conservio CrossFit.
Yeah, maybe you can travel to Africa and train and get fit.
Well, my CrossFit gym here, they actually want to organize a trip for everyone, like for all of the members that want to participate, to coming to Cape Town this year. So we might
awesome.
run that trip. Yeah.
You gotta film that, and it'll promote the CrossFit
definitely.
and promote you guys.
Yeah. No, that'd be cool. Yeah. So I mean, that's there's a lot of cool stories to get into, but I think we're a little bit over time already. For me, this was like super cool, and thanks for being such good guides on this LinkedIn journey. It feels very sort of natural and like just chatting with friends. That's you guys did an awesome job here.
Yeah, thank you guys.
You are chatting with friends
again.
Cool. No, absolutely. I think let us know. We keen. So we do need to hop to another call quickly. But Dan and Taylor, I'll catch up afterwards, and we can just let me know if there's anything you need from us, and then chat.
No worries. I'd like to find out. Yeah, I'd like to find out when one of your next LinkedIn chats are, and then I can jump in there and maybe just give you guys whatever I can to help you along. But thank you guys very much for coming on. And we will do it again, I'm sure.
Cool.
Awesome. Really
Thanks so
appreciate
much,
it.
guys.
Have a good
Thanks,
one, eh?
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys. Bye.